Here's another thing you gotta do. You gotta develop a response to all possible scenarios. Whatever we've discussed so far in the preparation part, you've got to develop a response to every possible scenario. I have never been into a negotiation room or a negotiation environment where I had not practiced the negotiation before. Like every scenario, if that happens, then that happens, and then this happens. If he says that, if they says this, then we can do this or say that, and we know our absolute bottom of where we are not going to step back there, and we are not going to compromise on something. So make sure that you know all of that. So if X happens, what do? Pre-plan your best offer and your second best offer. Start with your second best offer and let it simmer with the other party for a while. Use another decision maker as leverage. Always say you need to discuss this with your business partner first. Could be your wife, could be your other partner or your JV partner or another stakeholder, or you could always say, look, I just represent a group of investors and I've got to go back and talk to my investors. What that gives you, it gives you a way to get away from the situation. Go back, revise, do your research again, find out as much as you can if you haven't done the proper way, and then come back with another offer. So it also lets you save face, so to speak. I've used that many times. Would the vendor allow an option on the land? Find out. That's a possible scenario. Terms of call option, settlement time, and I'll discuss what options are a little bit later. Terms of call options, settlement time, be able to apply for planning permit or development approval, and or nominee clause or no nomination form or extension of time. You just got to remember with options is that they attract double stamp duty. What I mean by that is that if you get an option for $100 to purchase a piece of land, you get the development approval and you on sell the site. Obviously, if you got the development approval, you added some value to the land as we discussed earlier, and you sell it for $120. You will pay the stamp duty on $100, and the buyer buying off you will pay stamp duty on $120. So there are a lot of people who do courses on options, and trust me, when I started off, I did go to a course like that, which specialized in property options. But I understood there's actually, they come into picture when you are doing big, large house and land packages or big, larger land acquisitions. So you can do that, but smaller 4 townhouse developments or 16 apartments or these options might not come into play as much. However, I can't rule them out completely because they do happen. And I've actually bought a property because I got an option assigned to us. And we got the nomination form changed and got the option assigned to us. And I've also got an option on a block of land that has a potential to put 18 levels of residential and commercial on them. So I have dealt with options, but it is not a strategy that I keep as my prime. It's not a tool that I keep in my arsenal to use the first thing. It just depends upon how the negotiations are flowing and whether or not what kind of arrangement would the vendor be happy with, because I'll give you an example. This option that we've got on a block of land, which can be built to 18 levels of residential and commercial. That block of land, earlier all we wanted was a longer settlement. All we wanted to do was we will have an 18-month settlement. We give you a deposit now, X amount in X amount of time, and the settlement happens in 18 months. So from 18 months it went on to 12 months, and then it just, all the negotiations and the project and the deal actually evolved and then it eventually ended up to become an option. But I did not go after that vendor with an option in mind in the first place. So it is good to know what it does, but it's not something I would want you to specialize in, or I would myself want to specialize in, and this is all I do and I go there. But you got to remember this, that if you're paying stamp duty on that and you only made, let's say you're in Victoria, that's 5.5% stamp duty there, that's 5.5 there, and you've got a 20 uplift, which is a 20% uplift. 20% uplift in value for smaller projects is very hard to find. I can't say impossible, because nothing's impossible, but it's very hard to find. So imagine what you are pocketing is $15 here on this example, and you'll be paying tax on the $15. And by the time you're left with that $15, and remember that out of the $15, you've actually spent money to get the development approval. So that you might have spent $10 to get the development approval, and all you're left with is $5, and the $5 is taxable. So remember that using option as a full-on strategy might work for some, hasn't worked for me at all, unless it's a larger development. So if I totally discard that, it has, when I say it hasn't worked for me at all, is when I was trying to go and get an option on everything possible. After I did the course with someone, I just went and just wanted to get an option on everything. It doesn't work, because smaller projects, it would definitely won't work. It hasn't worked for me. And for larger projects, it does work. However, I didn't start off with an option in the first place. We started out negotiating with the vendor what is the best deal, what is the best way to do it, and so that the vendor's happy, we are happy, it's a win-win situation, and eventually we arrived at option. So remember that. Other negotiable terms, STCA, you must have read that in Victoria. It's very common. If you go to realestate.com.au, agents usually list a property with STCA. What that means is subject to council approval. Now you could have that as a clause, as one of your and one of the terms that you've negotiated, subject to council approval, or subject to finance, subject to due diligence. If it's a commercial property, you could say subject to seller providing a tax invoice so that you can claim your GST back. However, the moment you claim your GST back, the margin scheme won't apply because you've claimed the GST already. Ask your accountant about it. You could have terms like access to site, or subject to building inspection or pest inspection, and all these things.